So we talked about incomplete dominance, and that was where we gave the example of the red flower and the white flower, and their offspring was a pink flower. We have talked about codominance with the different types of blood types. A is dominant, B is dominant, O is recessive, and OB is codominant. When we have A, B, O, AB, those are all multiple alleles for that traits. Maybe it's blood type, maybe it's coat color, like we can see here for the different types of rabbit fur. It could be brown or black tipped, or the Himalayan color, or no pigment at all, or albino. Multiple alleles for the same trait. Sometimes we will have mutations that occur in the genome, and those mutations can be dominant over the normal wild type. So in this case, they mutated the Hox genes for these poor little fruit flies, and the Hox genes control where your body plan is, where your arms go, where your legs go. And here they messed with the Hox genes, and these poor fruit flies are growing, this guy is growing legs where his antenna should be. He's got legs on his head because they mutated his Hox genes, and that's that mutation is dominant over the normal wild type instead. Speaking of mutations, some of the drugs that we use to treat malaria, and malaria is passed on by mosquito bites, and they pass on this protist, this plasmodium, and plasmodium has figured out multiple different gene variations to account for the drug that they treat malaria with. And so they've got different types of drug resistance and lots of different versions of that drug resistance. So when this guy is infecting a person, they're at the haploid stage of their life cycle. And so if they're haploid, they only need one copy of the gene, whatever the gene is. And if we said that they have multiple versions of drug resistance genes, it's highly likely that that haploid life cycle, when it's inside the person in certain areas, those are going to have the drug resistant genes on them. So passing on genes and those traits matter not only when we're talking about growing another human, but also what affects us or pathogens. Okay, so we said multiple traits, multiple characteristics, multiple alleles for one trait. I got it out that time. Multiple alleles, one trait. The trait is coat color in this circumstance, and it's got multiple alleles. It could be blood type. That's the trait, and it has multiple alleles. Sometimes that trait is controlled by multiple genes at the same time. And if that's the case, we call it polygenic. So again, I've got another picture of my family because I like to make it personal. So here is family photo time. This photo is 5 years old. But this is my Uncle Jerry, and this is my Aunt Elaine, and she has passed on. But they have a daughter, and their daughter is Karen, and Karen is my cousin. So my cousin Karen, she looks really tan in that picture, by the way. She's not. She's just like me. My cousin Karen is pasty, Caucasian, like me, and she married BJ, and her husband clearly has darker skin than she does. So let's look at skin color. Skin color is controlled by multiple genes. So we have to crunch the numbers just like we did with the number crunching in the first section of this chapter. If we crunch the numbers, what's the likelihood that their child with these two parents would look like one parent or the other parent? Is it possible? Yeah, it is. Is it likely? No, not so much. There is a 1 in 64% chance that if they had children, that child would look like my cousin Karen, or that child would look like her husband, BJ Sr. A 1 in 64 chance. The more likely chance is that their child would be somewhere in the middle with this beautiful caramel coloration for his skin, and that's what happened. So here's BJ Jr., and he has the skin coloration that's in the middle. So numbers wise, it was more likely because this is a trait that is controlled by multiple genes, that their child, given their two extreme differences, would more likely be in the middle as far as skin coloration. Again, they could be, their child could be more towards one end or the other, but the likelihood is that they would be somewhere in between. So it's multiple genes controlling one trait. It's polygenic. And my example for polygenic is skin coloration. X-linked traits. We said that the somatic cells, and those are the cells all over your body, your regular normal body cells are called somatic cells, and those things we saw a karyotype. There were 23 pairs, right? 23 pairs, 2 sets. So we were 2 in, but we had 23 pairs. And out of those 23 pairs, when you saw that picture of the karyotype, 22 of those controlled genes that control a whole bunch of other different body functions. But the 23rd pair were our sex chromosomes. And you had 2 X's, you were a female. If you had an X and a Y, you have the SRY gene on the Y chromosome, and you would display male traits. So those are our sex chromosomes for people. 2 X's, female, X and a Y, male. And in this example, they are using fruit flies, and their eye coloration is located on the X chromosome. So they've set up a Punnett square. We've got females on top and males on the side. And let's play around. We're going to write the male's chromosomes. And again, males have a Y. This gene that we are looking at is only on the X. So we're not that concerned about the Y. We're just going to bring the Y on across through the Punnett square box, because the gene that we're looking for is X-linked. So we care about what's on the X chromosome, not on the Y chromosome. There are disorders on the Y chromosome, but that's not what we're talking about right now. Okay, so let's look at the X chromosomes. So let's see what's on the dad's X chromosome. And so here's dad's X chromosome. And I'm going to bring dad's X chromosome across. Dad's X chromosome has the gene that codes for the dominant trait, which is red eyes. So that dad, this guy, he's got red eyes. So we're going to put that wild red eye type on all of dad's X chromosomes, and we're going to drag them across the Punnett square. The Y chromosome doesn't have the eye color gene on it, so we just put the Y and drag it across the square. Now let's look at mom's genotype. Mom has, what color am I using? Mom has 2 X's. Here's mom's X's. And we're going to bring mom's X's down. And both of mom's X's, she has a recessive trait. And she has the white eyes. White are recessive. So here's our female. She's only going to show white eyes if she's got both of them, and she has white eyes. So she's got both genes, recessive, little w, for white eyes. So let's bring down her genes. Here's her little white eye genes on her X chromosome. Now, when I ask you questions about sex-linked chromosomes, I usually ask you about what's the percentage of, let's say, males. White or red. So let's look at that, the Punnett square, and see. If I'm asking you about males specifically, the only boxes I want you concerned about are these 2. Because the males, again, they have the Y chromosome. So there's only 2 out of the 4 boxes that have Y chromosomes. These are going to be their male offspring from these 2 parents. So out of the male offspring, what's the likelihood that they will have a male child with white eyes? What's the likelihood that they'll have a male child with white eyes? Well, if we look at those boxes, we got white there and we have white here. Both boxes, 2 out of 2. So it's 100% chance that they're male offspring are going to have white eyes. And if I asked you what the chance was if the male offspring have red eyes, then you would say none. There's no red, no red, so 0% chance for the male offspring. All right, so what if I'm asking you about female? What about the female offspring? What is the chance that females are going to have red eyes? Let's look at the female box. The females are this, no. Females are going to be this box and this box over here. And out of the females, remember red was dominant, and here's one, and here's one. So both of these, 2 out of 2, if we're asking about red, it's 100% chance that the females are going to have red eyes, and that there's 0% chance that they'll have white eyes. Let's switch it up. Let's play around with stuff. Let's say that we have a female, and this female, we're going to mess around with her, and we're going to say she's a carrier instead. So I'm going to make her a carrier. Take away that. And take away that right there. So if she's a carrier, I'm going to mess with one of her genes, and I'm going to say that she now has X chromosome, X chromosome, X chromosome, and we're going to say that she's a carrier for red eyes. So she would normally display, if I wrote her with those genes, she would have a red eye, even though she's got a recessive white. So let's put in that and see what that turns out with. What do our numbers look like now? So if we have a female who is a carrier, she's heterozygous for red eyes, what's the likelihood that this female who's heterozygous with red eyes paired with a male that only has red eyes because he only has the one X? What's the likelihood of that they will have a female offspring with red eyes? And let's look and see. We've got red eyes, heterozygous here, because we've got one red, one white, heterozygous, and then we've got red and red. We got homozygous. Both of these, 100% chance that those females are going to have red eyes, and a 0% chance that they will have white eyes. What if we asked about the males? If we're looking at the males, again, it's these 2 boxes down here. What's the likelihood of the parents with these genes having a male with white eyes? And if we look, again, there's only one X in each of the male's boxes. So this one has white eyes, and this one does not. So it is a 50% chance of white eyes and a 50% chance of red eyes and a 50% chance of white eyes. One box white and the other box is red. So out of the 2 boxes, a 50-50 shot. So if I am specifically asking you about a sex-linked trait and I am asking you about just the males, you only have 2 boxes to look at. So it's either 0%, 50%, or 100%. Those are your only options. If I am asking you about a sex-linked trait and I am asking you about females, it's the same situation. You're only looking at the top 2 boxes for females. All of them, 50-50, or none of them, 0, 50, or 100% chance. So these are X-linked traits. It doesn't have to be eye color for the fruit fly, Maybe it is hemophilia or color blindness or muscular dystrophy. These are all sex-linked disorders. So if you are colorblind, specifically red-green colorblind, then you have a hard time trying to figure out what this number is in this circle here. If you have hemophilia, it's hard for you to clot. You're missing clotting factors, so you run the risk of bleeding out if you get injured because your body's not going to clot and stop the bleed. If you have muscular dystrophy, eventually those muscles stop working and it causes muscle weakness. And again, they stop working and it leads to death. It is a lethal disorder. It is recessive, but since these things are only found on the X chromosome, and remember, whatever mom gets, whatever mom has, she passes down and gives to her sons, and the sons get whatever X's mom has. If mom has this recessive disorder, if mom has colorblindness, she's only passing along her crappy X genes with colorblindness on them to her sons. So if mom is colorblind and she has a male child, he's going to get it. He doesn't have a choice. That is why we see these sex-linked disorders more often in males than females, because females have another X that can come along with the dominant gene and override that recessive trait. So these are sex-linked disorders. You are only looking at these specific ones, and they are found on the X chromosome. So know how to write them up. Know that females have 2 X's. Know that males only have 1 X. And then understand how to write them. What is dad displaying? What is mom displaying? What are their genes, so you can figure out the Punnett square and take care of it. So that concludes this section. Again, get your piece of paper, show me it on the camera, get yourself a pen or pencil, and doodle these Punnett squares so you understand these points. I don't want you to miss points on these Punnett squares. Email me if you got questions about Punnett squares. We'll do the next laws of inheritance really fast in a different